Good day, everyone. Please be settled as we are about to begin shortly. Kindly make sure to turn off your microphones to avoid distractions while the debate is ongoing.
We appreciate your cooperation as we settle in for an exciting event.
But before we officially begin this event, let us give honor to our God, our country, and our university.
Please settle down and make yourselves comfortable.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise God, all creatures here below. Praise God above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinagang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang islang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iindig. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walhagit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hindi kaya na pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Maayong nga adlaw sa tanan. Welcome to today's parliamentary debate in reading in Philippine history. My name is Jonna May sa Tinitigan.
And Dale Ivan B. Nachere, your hosts for this event. We have two opposing teams ready to engage in a spirited and intellectual discussion.
A debate like this is an opportunity to challenge ideas and gain new insights, new perspectives, So let's ensure we maintain a respectful and open-minded atmosphere all throughout these events.
Here are the mechanics for us to be guided. The debate will be divided into 4 rounds. In each round, there will be one debater coming from the group. The first round will be the opening speech. The debater assigned will be given 5 minutes.
And for the second round is called reveal and refutal. Each team will have 7 minutes to give your arguments.
In the third round, which is extend and contribute, you will also have 7 minutes to defend your arguments.
And lastly is the round 4. It is called the closing whip, in which you will also utilize 7 minutes to sum up and conclude your arguments.
Your motion or issue is questioning Rizal's heroic status, unraveling the impact of retraction on conviction and legacy.
And next, for your social dilemma is thus the release of the controversial retraction letter of Rizal make him unworthy in the pantheon of Philippine heroes. And before we proceed, let us also acknowledge our judges for this debate. Without further delay, let us begin this parliamentary debate.
We have 2 teams, the Group 1, opposition team or the Anti-Rizal. And on the other side, we have Group 2, opposition team or the Pro-Rizal. For the proposition side, the argument asserts that the retraction letter reveals Rizal's contemplation that his actions were not heroic.
And for the opposition side, the counter-argument maintains that the retraction letter may not necessarily undermine the heroism of Rizal's actions, suggesting alternative interpretations or emphasizing the broader context surrounding the document.
To begin with, may we call on the proposition leader to begin with your opening statement.
But before that, please be reminded that after the proposition leader, the moment he or she will begin to speak, the debate will continue the process.
Good luck, speakers. Proposition team, you may now begin with your opening statement.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow debaters, today we, the proposition team, stand to question the heroic status of Dr. Jose Rizal, a revered figure in Philippine history. So the motion is questioning Rizal's heroic status, unraveling the impact of retraction on conviction and legacy. We assert that the release of the controversial retraction letter of Rizal makes him unworthy of his place in the pantheon of Philippine heroes. To clarify, the term retraction letter refers to the document allegedly signed by Rizal on the eve of his execution, in which he supposedly renounced his revolutionary activities and returned to the Catholic faith. Heroic status implies the recognition of Rizal as a national hero, a symbol of courage, and an advocate for Philippine independence. Our argument hinges on the authenticity and implications of this retraction letter. We identify the potential erosion of Rizal's legacy due to the retraction letter. If Rizal indeed retracted his revolutionary stance, it casts doubt on his conviction and the principles he stood for. This retraction suggests a contemplation that his actions were not heroic, thereby undermining his status as a national hero. Some point to Rizal's retraction letter as evidence that he doubted his revolutionary ideas and sought reconciliation with the Spanish authorities. Rizal's retraction letter casts a shadow over his legacy. By publicly renouncing his earlier revolutionary views and reconciling with the Catholic Church, he demonstrated that his convictions were not unwavering. This act suggests he may have second-guessed the principles he once stood for. If Rizal himself had doubts about his actions, how can we unquestionably uphold him as the ultimate national hero? Doesn't a true hero stand firm in their beliefs even in the face of death? According to a study by Miranda 2021, the authenticity of Rizal's retraction letter remains highly contested, with significant implications for his legacy. So the study highlights that accepting the retraction as genuine fundamentality alters our perception of Rizal's commitment to the cause of Philippine independence. Given this point, we advocate for re-evaluation of Rizal's status as a national hero. This does not mean erasing his contributions, but rather placing them in a more nuanced context. We propose that educational curricula and public commemorations reflect this complexity, acknowledging both his achievements and the implications of this retraction. My team will further elaborate on the historical context of the retraction letter and provide additional evidence supporting our stance. In essence, the retraction letter, if genuine, reveals a critical aspect of Rizal's character that cannot be ignored. We, the proposition side, believe that this retraction makes Rizal unworthy of his unchallenged place in the pantheon of Philippine heroes. Thank you.
Honorable judges, dear colleagues, thank you. Today, we gather not only to discuss a man, but to reflect on the monumental legacy left behind by one of our nation's most revered heroes, Dr. Jose Rizal. His life, his writings, and his ultimate sacrifice have cemented his place in history as a beacon of Filipino pride, intellect, and nationalism. At the heart of today's discussion lies the question: does the purported retraction a letter allegedly penned by Rizal before his execution cast a shadow over his legacy as a national hero? The proposition claims that this letter diminishes the value of his contribution, suggesting that it undermines the steadfastness of his ideals. However, we stand here today to argue the opposite. But for the sake of this debate, let's just say that the letter is indeed genuine. Still, we believe that this document, rather than eroding his stature, opens up a deeper understanding of Rizal's complex humanity. Far from undermining his heroism, his alleged retraction, when examined within its broader context, enhances our appreciation of Rizal as a man of profound intellect, conviction, and patriotism. The essence of Rizal's contributions to our nation lies not in whether or not he signed a retraction letter, but in his dedication to the ideals of freedom, education, and national pride. Whether or not Rizal had moments of doubt or sought reconciliation with the church does not negate the sacrifice he made in the country of in the name of our country. His life's work, De Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, his advocacy for peaceful reform, and his death as a martyr remains untarnished. Let us focus on the greater picture. Let us remember that Rizal was not defined by a single moment or document, but by entirety of his life's mission. To reduce his heroism to one letter would be a grave injustice. Our goal is to explore the reasons why Rizal may have retracted his Masonic beliefs and critics of the Catholic Church, and to explain why this does not in any way detract from his greatness as a hero. Instead, it sheds light on his personal struggle, his pragmatic approach to the cause of Filipino independence, and his unwavering love for the Filipino people. Through this lens, we will show that Rizal's possible retraction, if it indeed happened, fits within the broader context of his life and thought. By considering the historical, psychological, and philosophical factors at play, we can see that his final moments were marked by personal integrity and courage, not contradiction or cowardice. Firstly, the multifaceted nature of heroism. Heroism is not static concept confined to a single act, decision, or document. It is a fluid, evolving quality shaped by breadth of one's action, intentions, and the legacy they leave behind. In the case of Dr. Rizal, his heroism is not tied to one singular moment, but is a culmination of his lifelong dedication to the Filipino people, his intellectual contributions, and his ultimate sacrifice for the cause of freedom. From the very beginning, Rizal committed himself to a life to service to his country, utilizing his talents as a writer, physician, and reformer to raise awareness of the injustices perpetrated by colonial rule and to inspire his Filipino peoples to dream for a better future. His intellectual contributions, particularly through his novels Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, were revolutionary in their impact. These works exposed the corruption and abuses of the Spanish authorities and the friars, awakening a sense of national identity and consciousness among Filipinos. Through his writing, Rizal provided a vision of a free and just society, one where Filipinos could govern themselves and take pride in their culture, heritage, and rights. His essays and speeches, too, reflected a deep commitment to peaceful reform, education, and the empowerment of the Filipino people. No solitary document, especially one whose authenticity is highly contested, can diminish the profound influence Rizal had on the nation's struggle for independence. His martyrdom in Bagumbayan, where he faced his executioners with unwavering resolve, only solidified his status as a national hero. His death was not in vain. It ignited the flames of nationalism and courage that ultimately led to revolution and the eventual liberation of the Philippines from colonial rule. His sacrifice served as a rallying point from the Filipino people, inspiring them to continue the fight for independence long after his passing. Secondly, alternative interpretations of the retraction letter. Even if we accept the retraction letter as genuine, it can be interpreted in a various way. It may have been written under duress, as Rizal faced imminent execution. The Spanish colonial authorities were notorious for their coercive tactics, and it's plausible that Rizal wrote the letter to secure leniency or protect his family from repercussions. Therefore, the letter does not necessarily reflect a true abandonment of his ideals, but rather highlights his humanity in the face of extreme adversity. Thirdly, the broader historical context. We must consider the oppressive colonial environment in which Rizal lived. The Spanish regime employed psychological and physical pressures to suppress dissent. In such context, any statements or documents produced under supervision are suspect. Moreover, Rizal's overall contribution to the nation far outweigh the implication of a single contested document. His actions inspired a revolution and unified a people yearning for freedom. In conclusion, Dr. Jose Rizal's heroism is forever etched in the annals of our history, not due to any controversy surrounding an alleged retraction letter, but because of his unwavering dedication to the Filipino people and the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice that he championed. Rizal's legacy transcends any single moment of doubt or uncertainty, as it is rooted in the entirety of his life's work. His literary, his literary masterpieces, his fight for reform, and his sacrifices on behalf of the Filipino nation. His tireless efforts to awaken national consciousness and inspire a sense of humanity and unity among Filipinos remain at the core of his enduring impact. We must recognize that a hero's legacy is not defined by isolated incidents, but by the totality of their action and the lasting impact they left behind. In the case of Dr. Rizal, his commitment to the Filipino people, his fight for equality, and his vision for a better future continue to resonate long after his death. His heroism, therefore, cannot and should not be judged by a single letter or moment, but by the entirety of his life's mission and the indelible mark he left on our nation's path for independence. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to state the side of my team. Yes, we understand that Rizal provides such great contribution in the Philippine history context. But now that his retraction resurfaced, this sparks and, and debate and doubts of all. Yes, he has a good contribution, but let's focus more on his retraction letter and his moral ambiguity because this also reflects on his works and his contributions. So the fact that he was never been proclaimed a national hero says it all. If Rizal did retract, This undermines his maturity and views of sincerity. The actions surrounding Rizal's final moments reflect a sense of ambiguity that complicates his portrayal as a steadfast national hero. But then again, according to Cavana, 1956, in his work entitled Rizal's Unfading Glory, a documentary history of the conversation of Dr. Jose Rizal, the after, that after making other minor changes to the draft, Rizal signed his retraction letter before midnight. Father Balaguer, also a main witness, handed it over to Father Pai, who in turn submitted it to Archbishop Bernardino Nozaleda. Rizal even stated in his retraction letter, I declare myself and I quote, I declare myself a Catholic, and in this religion in which I was born and educated, I wish to live and die. I retract with all my heart whatever in my words, writings, publications, and conduct has been contrary to my character as son of the Catholic Church. I believe and I confess whatever she teaches, and I submit to whatever she demands. And I abominate Masonry as the enemy, which is of the church, and as a society prohibited by the church. If we talk about retracting, then retracting means he died without a sense of purpose, and that everything that he stood for in his novels becomes uncertain and doubting if that's how it is. So heroes are celebrated for their clarity of purpose, and Rizal's retraction suggests he lacks such clarity. If a retraction was signed in his final hours, an act seemingly contradicting his earlier writings, then it introduces a deep uncertainty about what Rizal truly believed in. Was he a committed reformist? Or was his nationalism conditional on his personal safety and circumstances? In Leon Maria Guerrero's book, The First Filipino, it stated there that during Rizal's exile in Dapitan, Dr. Pio Valenzuela, a member of the newly founded Katipunan movement, visited and consulted him about their planned uprising. Rizal strongly disapproved of it since Filipinos are still unprepared when it comes to both weaponry and determination, also adding the fact that most of them were unskilled in the battlefield. So this shows his reluctance to openly support the Katipunan revolt, his criticisms of Bonifacio's radicalism, and then later encouragement of Filipinos to pursue gradual reforms reflect a moral ambiguity that makes his heroism questionable. So this ambiguity affects how we are view his writings and speeches. Are they authentic calls for reform or self-serving strategies for survival? The retraction is authentic that even Leon Maria Guerrero and Nick Joaquin talked and agreed on their works. Historians Renato Constantino argued in his essay Veneration Without Understanding that Rizal was not worthy of his high status in our history books, calling him a United States sponsored hero because he was a model of peaceful activist because he retracted. And unlike Bonifacio, who is aggressive and had wreaked havoc during the revolt, Rizal's vacillation between opposing armed revolt and inspiring it shows a pattern of inconsistency. So this lack of clarity is crystallized in the retraction letter, whether genuine or coerced, reflecting a struggle between personal survival and public ideals. With that being said, the proposition theme stands firm to recognize the retraction letter as a significant piece of evidence that makes his stand questionable in the line of national heroes. Thank you, and that would be the side of the proposition team.
Honorable colleagues, today we stand united in our shared admiration for Dr. Jose Rizal, a luminary whose life and legacy continue to inspire generations of Filipinos as we reflect on the controversial retraction letter attributed to him. I urge you to consider its profound implication, not merely as document, but as a window into the heart of a man grappling with his faith and the weight of his convictions. In his declaration, Rizal expresses his deep longing for reconciliation with the Catholic Church, the very faith in which he was born and raised. As you have cited, he speaks with sincerity, saying, I declare myself a Catholic, affirming his desire to live and die within the embrace of his religion. This letter is a heartfelt confession of a man in his final moments sought to mend the rift between his personal beliefs and his upbringing. It is a testament to his humanity, a reminder that even the greatest among us are not immune to doubt, fear, or the desire of redemption. However, let us be clear, this retraction letter, if it exists, is a religious declaration, not a political one. It does not erase the revolutionary spirit that coursed through its veins, nor does it diminish the fiery passion that fueled his writings. Rizal's novels and essays exposed the injustices of colonial rule, igniting the flames of nationalism and inspiring countless Filipinos to rise against oppression. His commitment to the cause of freedom and equality was unwavering and result shaped by a vision for a better future for his beloved homeland. Let's not allow this document to overshadow the monumental impact of his life's work. Rizal's legacy is not confined to the pages of any single letter. Instead, it lives on its the hearts of those he inspired and in the freedom he cherishes today. We must celebrate his commitment to justice, equality, and the Filipino spirit, values that remain in the guiding light of our nation. I rise to support the argument made by the leader of the opposition. The notion that Dr. Rizal's heroism can be diminished by the existence of a retraction letter is fundamentally flawed. History must not be understood in isolation. We cannot judge a person's entire life filled with complexity and bravery based on a single contested document. Rizal's dedication to his country went far beyond religious beliefs or last minute reconciliations. Even in the retraction letter were genuine, it does not alter the fact that Rizal fought for the right of Filipinos, exposing the injustices committed under colonial rule. He inspired that sought freedom and dignity. He used his intelligence, writings, and actions to awaken the spirit of independence in the Filipino people. His martyrdom was an act of supreme selflessness, regardless of any private reconciliation with the church. We must focus on his lasting impact on the nation and not conjecture regarding his final hours. However, I must reiterate that the alleged retraction letter does not diminish the heroism of Dr. Jose Rizal. Allow me to address the points raised and strengthen our stance. First, moral complexity and human fallibility. Heroes are not mythical beings, immune to fear, doubt, or pressure. They are human, and their struggles often mirror the challenges faced by the ordinary people. Second, the impact of Rizal's martyrdom. Rizal's execution became the catalyst for the Philippine Revolution. His death galvanized Philippine people or Filipinos to fight for independence, providing that his influence extended beyond his life. In conclusion, let us remember that Dr. Jose Rizal not only as a hero of the revolution, but as a man who grappled with his fate and sought redemption in a world fraught with challenges. His destruction, if indeed it was a genuine expression of faith, should be viewed in the context of his entire life, a life dedicated to the pursuit of truth, justice, and the unwavering love for his country. As we honor Rizal, we must remember the true heroism is found in the moments of perfection, is not found in the moments of perfection, but in a wavering pursuit of one's ideal despite all challenges. His legacy is therefore best judged by the totality of his contribution and the enduring influence he holds in the heart of Filipinos. Let us remember from the full breadth of his achievements, for to do otherwise would not be neglect the invaluable lessons he imparted to us all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Miss Mariela Erico V. Palag, and I will be the one to deliver the opposition extend and contribute for round three. The proposition team strongly stands firm that the retraction of Jose Rizal diminishes his worth as a hero, as it is a sign of doubt of his actions. By going back to his faith, he renounced his writings. When we say renounce, it means give up or resign. He renounced his writings, including his advocacy, which implies that his fight against Spanish colonization is no longer justified. This casts a doubt on whether he continued to view his cause as a noble and just or misguided. Maybe the opposition team would point out that it is still a doubt and thus it is still uncertain. However, let me refute that one in advance, that the fact that a doubt exists already means that there is inconsistency of his aspirations and of what he truly believes is righteous. Or perhaps the opposition team would point out that he was just coerced or manipulated into retracting, and thus no one has a right to say that he really gave up his advocacy. That would have been a strong evidence of his dedication for the country if he did not retract, even if coerced or not. Why? Let me give an example. Remember the Cavite Mutiny leader, Fernando La Madrid, was executed just because he refused to shout or hail Viva la España amidst life and death situations. This right here is a great example of a hero who is not doubting his actions. Unfortunately, he and along with other prominent figures weren't recognized enough, the same as with Jose Rizal. Perhaps now, the opposition team would point out if the retraction letter really matters even amidst Jose Rizal's contribution. This is to refute the part that document a heroism of a person does not rely on a document. The retraction letter really matters even amidst Jose Rizal's contribution. As for our stand, it matters because many fought and died for Philippines' freedom right after his death, and one of those prominent figures was Andres Bonifacio, the leader of the KKK, Kataas-Taasang Kagalang-Galangang Katipunan, the mark of Philippine Revolution in 1896. The revolution succeeded in 1898, led by our brave revolutionists and Filipino soldiers back then. The retraction of Rizal matters because it shows then that he backed out and doubted his cause, which leaves the Philippine Revolution, led by the KKK as the main figures, sole reason that brought the Philippine independence. We acknowledge the novels of Jose Rizal, but Jose Rizal is not the turning point in Philippine history that first ignited and sparked the Filipinos' hunger for independence. It is the unjust execution of the three Filipino priests, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, that ushered a new era or reform movement. Jose Rizal is just a part of a bigger story, and his retraction shows even more that he is not worthy to be called a hero, as it implies a doubt of heroism. That would be all for my argument. Thank you so much.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, I stand in agreement with my fellow opposition members in defending the enduring heroism of Dr. Jose Rizal. We must look at the broader narrative of his life. His sacrifices, Rizal's sacrifices, intellectual contributions, and call for peaceful reform cannot be erased just by a single document. Even if Rizal had signed a retraction letter, it was likely done under the extreme pressure or duress, given his imminent execution. So this is no way erases his legacy. Again, as stated by Ambet Ocampo in the year 2020, Rizal retracted religious errors. The document does not in any way erase the impact of his life, his novels, essays, and poetry in art history. Let us remember that Rizal was a man of reason and intellect, who advocated for progress and enlightenment. His desire for reform and his unwavering love for the Filipino people was evident throughout his life. Therefore, one moment of possible regret or reconsideration, if it even occurred, cannot undo decades of work that led to the formation of national consciousness. The proposition our side asserts that a hero must remain unwavering in their convictions until the very end. This perspective imposes an unrealistic standard of perfection on historical figures. It disregards the immense psychological and physical pressures that Rizal faced and diminishes the broader scope of his contributions. Firstly, questionable authenticity of the letter. The maxim, actus me invito, factus non est meos actus. An act done against my will is not my act, is particularly relevant in discussions on Jose Rizal's alleged retraction. This principle suggests that if Rizal were coerced or pressured into retracting his views or belief, any such retraction should not be considered a true reflection of his convictions. The authenticity of Rizal's supposed retraction letter has long been debated with some historians, suggesting that he may have been pressured by religious authorities or others in power to recant his views, especially in the final hours before his executions. If this were the case, any act of retraction made under duress would not be his genuine act, but rather a product of coercion. This perspective aligned with the legal maxim, emphasizing that an action forced upon an individual, particularly one that contradicts their values and belief, does not truly belong to them. In light of this, if the retraction were indeed coerced, it would be unjust to consider it a true renunciation of his beliefs, writings, or patriotism. Rather, Rizal's life and work dedicated to Philippine freedom and reform stands as his true legacy. Thus, regardless of the retraction's authenticity, Rizal's principles and love for the country remain intact, untainted by an act that may have not been his true will. So to base our judgment of Rizal's heroism on a document marred in such uncertainty is both unfair and historically unsound. True historical analysis requires that we consider the broader concept, the context, and reliable evidence, rather than focusing on one contested piece that fails to hold up under scrutiny. Rizal's legacy as a national hero rests on a lifetime of commitment to freedom and reform, a commitment attested to by countless credible sources and the transformative effect he had on the nation. Secondly, Rizal's enduring principles. Throughout his life, Dr. Jose Rizal was a steadfast advocate for peaceful reform, believing that meaningful change could be achieved without resorting to violent evolution. Even if he did indeed write a retraction letter, it could be interpreted as a final act in line with his lifelong commitment to minimize conflict and bloodshed. Rizal may have seen this gesture as a way to protect his people from harsher reprisals by the colonial authorities, hoping that a show of reconciliation might ease tensions and prevent further suffering. So this interpretation aligns seamlessly with Rizal's consistent dedication to the welfare of the Filipino people. His vision for change was deeply rooted in the pursuit of justice through education, dialogue, and peaceful advocacy rather than armed resistance. In conclusion, Dr. Jose Rizal's heroism goes far beyond the controversy surrounding the alleged retraction letter. His legacy is defined not by a single contested document, but by the profound intellectual contribution of him. His selfless sacrifice and national awakening he inspired in the hearts of Filipinos. Rizal's writing, particularly Noli Me Tangere, El Filibusterismo, laid bare the injustices of the colonial rule, igniting a movement for reform and independence that would forever change the course of our history. Thank you.
Can we truly call a man hero if he wavers in the face of his deepest convictions? This is not a question of merely celebrating the ideals of freedom and reform. It is a question of unwavering commitment of integrity and of courage to stand by one's beliefs, even at the ultimate cost. As the maxim goes, a hero is someone who, in the face of adversity, holds the line. Jose Rizal's legacy is clouded by his decision to retract the very ideals he once fiercely defended. It's a decision that cannot simply be dismissed or ignored. Our first argument centers on the doubt cast by the retraction letter, Rizal's choice to renounce his writings and revolutionary stance calls into question the depth of his dedication to the Filipino cause. By retracting, he signaled that he may have lost faith in one's steadfast ideals. Critics might reference his masterpieces, Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, as symbols of his enduring fight for freedom. Yet, the retraction letters starkly contrast the revolutionary spirit of those texts, implying that he no longer saw his battle for independence as noble as justified. To the opposition's claim that his heroism transcends this moment of doubt, I counter. A true hero does not retreat from his principles at the final hour. How can we uphold a man as an enduring symbol of resistance if in his last days he stepped away from that very resistance? Now, let's address the ambiguity surrounding Rizal's final hours. The retraction letter is not just a religious declaration, as the opposition claims. It is a moral ambiguity, a moment where the lines between personal and political become blurred. Even if the letter was driven by religious motivations, it still affects his political legacy. The fact that Rizal retracted the beliefs he stood for throughout his life introduces an inconsistency that weakens his status as a steadfast advocate for independence. The opposition argues that his dedication to freedom is best understood through his life's work and not his final hours. But isn't it the final moment that one's true character is revealed? If Rizal's last act was to withdraw his revolutionary spirit, how can we separate his crucial decision from his broader legacy? Rizal's entire life was built around the fight against Spanish colonialism. Through his writings, his advocacy, and his intellectual contributions. Yet, the retraction stands as a contradiction to his narrative. The opposition suggests that the retraction should not erase his legacy, claiming that an act under coercion that does not diminish his impact. But let us be clear. If we accept that Rizal was coerced, we are admitting that he allowed himself to be swayed in his final hours, casting a doubt on his fortitude as a leader. This in itself contradicts the image of Rizal as a resilient figure who up until the end resisted colonial tyranny. Furthermore, Rizal's recanting of his earlier writings, the very text that inspired a revolution, was not just a personal act. It was a public and political statement to suggest that his letter does not impact his political legacy, is to ignore the weight of historical evidence and the standards we hold for heroes. Finally, let's not underestimate the broader implications. If we continue to elevate Rizal, a figure whose commitment wavered, we are endorsing a narrative of conditional heroism. Heroism that bends under pressure, that allows for ambiguity in its dedication. The opposition may argue that his martyrdom in Bagong Bayan galvanized the nation. Yet the message we send by excusing his final retraction risks weakening our national identity. How can we expect a sense of unity and resistance when our central figure renounces beliefs in his last moments? The opposition's first argument is that the legacy of Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo proves his dedication to freedom. Yet, I contend that the power of these works is overshadowed by the retraction, which diminishes their revolutionary significance. The second argument claims that the retraction was merely religious, not political. But the political and personal in Rizal's life were always intertwined. His writings were his weapon, and his faith was never divorced from his fight for justice. Finally, the opposition argues that coercion absolves Rizal of responsibility. Yet we must ask, what does it mean to be a hero if you capitulate when it matters most? In conclusion, our stance is not about vilifying Rizal, but about critically assessing what it means to be a hero and the legacy we pass down to future generations. A hero does not waver when confronted with the ultimate challenge. Rizal's retraction letter introduces doubt, ambiguity, and a fundamental contradiction for his legacy, raising essential questions about his true commitment to the cause. If we are to honor the fight for Philippine independence, let us hold our heroes to a higher standard, one of unwavering conviction and enduring courage. Thank you.
Team judges, respected audience, thank you for your attention and engagement throughout this debate. As we draw to a close, allow me to summarize the key points. Allow me to summarize the key points raised and explain why Jose Rizal's heroism remains unquestionable despite the alleged retraction letter. First and foremost, the opposition has rightly argued that heroism is not defined by a single moment. Throughout this debate, the proposition has focused almost exclusively on the alleged retraction letter, neglecting the broader context of Rizal's life and contributions. Rizal's intellectual leadership, his groundbreaking writings, and his martyrdom are the true markers of his heroism. Secondly, we must remember that heroes are human beings. The proposition's idealized version of heroism, which demands unwavering conviction in the face of death, is unrealistic and dismissive of the complexities of the human experience. Heroes, like all people, are capable of fear, doubt, and even regret. If we accept the possibility that Rizal's alleged retraction was indeed genuine, we must view it not as a betrayal of his ideals, but rather as a reflection of his struggle with faith. The opposition highlights three factors why Rizal's retraction, if it is genuine, is a religious act rather than political. First, it is an affirmation of faith. The letter begins with Rizal's declaration of his Catholic identity, stating, to quote, "I declare myself a Catholic, and in this religion in which I was born and educated, I wish to live and die." This opening clearly emphasizes his desire to reconnect with his faith, indicating that the core of his message is about his relationship with the Catholic Church. By positioning his Catholicism at the forefront, Rizal is expressing a religious commitment rather than political agenda. Second, it focuses on religious doctrine. Rizal's retraction includes specific statements against the Masonic beliefs he previously espoused, describing them as the enemy of the church. This focus on disavowing particular beliefs and organization illustrates a clear religious motivation. If he were renouncing his political stance or nationalist aspirations, one would expect a broader critique of his writings and actions that aim at challenging colonial rule. Instead, the letter centers on matters of faith and doctrine, reflecting an internal spiritual struggle. Third, desire for reconciliation. The language of the retraction suggests a yearning for reconciliation with the Catholic Church. It states, to quote, "I retract with all my heart whatever in my words, writings, publications, and conduct has been contrary to my character as the son of the Catholic Church." This indicates a desire to mend his relationship with the Catholic Church rather than a withdrawal from the fight for independence. His focus on repairing his standing within the church highlights the personal nature of his decision. But The poem Mi Ultimo Adios by Jose Rizal plays a crucial role in the debate over whether he retracted his anti-Catholic views before his execution. Written on the night before his death, this poem is seen as a powerful expression of his steadfast commitment to his beliefs and nationalism, which challenges claims that he indeed recanted. The content of Mi Ultimo Adios contrasts sharply with the retraction theory, which suggests that Rizal, under pressure from clergy, renounced Masonry and returned to Catholicism. The poem's themes of resisting oppression and advocating for reform appear inconsistent with a last-minute retraction. My fellow Filipinos, as we reflect on the legacy of the giants who shaped our nation, we are called to remember the man who stands at the heart of our struggle for freedom, and that is Jose Rizal. Born into a world of oppression where the hopes and dreams of Filipinos were crushed under colonial rule, he dared to imagine a future where Filipinos could live free from fear, free from injustice, and free from the change that had bound our ancestors for centuries. But today, you question whether Rizal is truly deserving of the title of a hero. And I say to you, how can we even ask such a question? To doubt Rizal's heroism is to deny the sacrifices he made, the legacy he left, and the future he fought for, a future that we are all enjoying now. We must remember the voices of Claro M. Recto and Jose P. Laurel, two of our nation's greatest patriots who stood firm in defense of Rizal's memory. Claro Recto, president of the 1934 Constitutional Commission, and Jose Laurel, former president of our republic, they believed in the power of Rizal's works to transform the Filipino spirit. These men, both architects of our nation's political landscape, were unwavering in their beliefs that to question Rizal's heroism would be an insult to the very intellect of the Filipino people. And yet, we live in an age where the title of a hero is being questioned and manipulated. We have seen Ferdinand Marcos Sr., a dictator whose regime left a trail of suffering, oppression, and death, buried in the libingan ng mga bayani in 2016. How can we call a man who silenced his own people, stifled freedoms, and trampled on justice a hero, while doubting the heroism of Jose Rizal, who gave his life so that the Filipino people might be free? Rizal fought not with violence, but with his ideals. He stood for peaceful reform, for justice through reason, and for freedom through education. His sacrifice was not one of a bloodshed, but of intellect, spirit, and soul. He faced his death with courage, knowing that his martyrdom would spark a revolution of hearts and minds, one that could not be crushed by any force. There are some who even bring up to the question of Rizal's retraction letter. If the letter is indeed genuine, it must be clear. It was a religious act, not political. It was not a renunciation of his beliefs, nor of his fight for freedom. It was an expression of personal faith, a return to his spiritual roots, and in no way it diminishes the towering political heroism that defined Rizal's life. His unwavering love for his country and his people never faltered, even in his final moments. He died for our freedom, and no retraction letter could ever change that truth. So, my fellow Filipinos, my fellow BSED Social Studies students, I ask you, if we can call a dictator like Marcos Sr. a hero, how can we even question the heroism of Dr. Jose Rizal? If Marcos, despite the pain he inflicted in his own people, can be laid to rest in the pantheon of Philippine heroes in the libingan ng mga bayani, how can we even consider doubting Rizal, a man whose entire life was dedicated to the liberation of his fellow Filipinos? In conclusion, the alleged retraction letter, if it is genuine, does not diminish Rizal's heroism. Rizal's contribution to Filipino nationalism His intellectual leadership and his martyrdom continue to inspire the Filipino people to this day. Rizal remains a hero, and his place in the pantheon of Philippine heroes is well deserved. Mabuhay si Jose Rizal, mabuhay ang Pilipinas. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, proposition and opposition speakers, for that insightful and thought-provoking debate we have just witnessed. As we come to the conclusion of this stimulating debate, we extend our deepest thanks to our speakers, to our researchers, and to our judges for your participation throughout the event.
It has been a privilege to witness such well thought out arguments on both sides, shedding light on a question that challenges an understanding of history and heroism.
Whether or not we reach a consensus, what matters most is that we continue to ask critical questions and explore the nuances of our national identity.
We hope that this has sparked a deeper appreciation for the complexities of history and the power of open dialogue.
We wish you a pleasant day, and may we continue to engage in thoughtful discussions. Adios at mabuhay ang Pilipinas.